Productive Pastor 118, why I'm shifting back to more analog productivity. Welcome back, friends. Productive Pastor, the place online for a conversation about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. As always, I'm Chad Brooks, the host, the steward. Here in Productive Pastor land, good to have you. Hope your week's been cool. Hope you've been having fun. Hope you're enjoying ministry. Hope it's been a good time. Excited to talk a little bit about, some changes, some things that I've been working on. Before we jump into that, just so you know, this episode is sponsored by my course, Becoming Productive. If you're saying, Chad, I kind of need to get this under control, I got to figure this out. I might be new in ministry, I might have some changes, or I just need to get stuff squared away. Becoming Productive course is right there for you. 11 episodes, tons of worksheets, video content, teaching content. It's all companion to the first 11 episodes of the podcast. But I highly recommend it. You can cruise over the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/118. Get the link to that and jump into Becoming Productive. Also, cruise over there, be part of the Productive Pastor email group. I send these out weekly, and it's where we kind of get deeper into some very tangible, tactical type stuff. Right now, I'm in the middle of a writing series all month long about your 2025 preaching calendar, because I believe in preaching calendars. So make sure you sign up, and you can get those in your mail, in your email inbox, not paper mail. That would take way too long. Although it might be kind of fun. I don't know. I love getting paper mail. So anyway, let's jump into the content of this episode about analog productivity and kind of the journey I've been on over the last few months, going back to more of it. So part of productivity is the inevitable tool exploring. I think it's a phase that many people go through in cycles in their productivity journey. I'm over on the productivity subreddit a lot, and there's a few interesting things that go on, but I see a lot of tool chasing. Tool chasing is part of it. I get messages all the time from pastors saying, hey, Chad, I'm trying to figure this out. What do you think about tool X, Y, Z, and can I make it do this? I mean, there's a thing about it. It's also very easy for us to think we're being productive by simply looking at productivity tools. It's part of the conversation. But there's tool exploring. It goes on. And I like to think about it as a cycle. Every time a lap is made, hopefully what the person is able to figure out is to learn more and more what actually works for them, because everything works for everybody differently. Sure, I have some recommended pathways, but it's going to be individualized. It's going to be, self-creative, that sort of a thing. When I started my journey in ministry productivity in 2005, it was all paper-based. Every single thing was paper-based. I had a notebook, and I made a task list, and I got after it every day. My calendar was paper-based as well. This is back before, if you remember before smartphones, you might have had a calendar on your computer, but, you didn't have it right there in front of you all the time, and so most people still kept some semblance of a paper calendar. And I would just draw it out and just do it in my notebook, right there. Even when I got into seminary and I found tools like Evernote, I was still working out a lot of it. And, what I called now my working notebook, this idea of, I've got one notebook for everything. I was keeping my calendar, my tasks, my appointments, but I was also doing thinking work and other kind of stuff in the same place. On another loop that I had, I found out about how great of a tool that Trello was. And Trello stuck. I ran it through the paces, and I found ways that it worked for me, and Trello seemed to stick. And I've gone through all sorts of other apps. I did Todoist for a while. I messed around with Rome Research a couple of years ago, all those sorts of things. But I ran through this stuff, and I kept this hybrid digital analog system for years, and it worked well. And then around 3 or 4 years ago, I moved off of a paper notebook for my working notebook, started using GoodNotes. Back, I think, in version 4. It's in version 6 now. And I pretty much became 100% analog at that point in time. I kept a paper devotional prayer journal, but every single thing was digital. This included reading and research and all sorts of other stuff. And in the last episode, one of the things I shared is how, for me right now, ministry is changing. And I found myself doing a lot more administration. And I also travel a lot. And with this, some of the need for some new systems started to shift. And this summer, I went out for like a week, and I was with some work colleagues for this trip. And I went to a conference, but I knew I'd also have to be doing a lot of working while I'm at the conference. And for some reason, I went and grabbed my old leather traveler's notebook, threw a couple of A5 notebooks and a stack of index cards, and realized, no, this is working really, really well. It was easier to take notes for the conference on the notebook than it was to do it with GoodNotes. I didn't have to worry about charging my iPad, and it was just getting kind of fumbly, and it made me start thinking about analog. And so I got back, and I realized, hey, I've been importing my Daysheet template into GoodNotes for years, but I started printing off Daysheets, and I made what I now call my log sheet. I started printing out physical log sheets, and it was just so much easier. And I realized I was going back more into an analog space, and that's what I want to talk about today. Not as a you need to do this because I'm doing it thing, but more just to tell the story of adaptability and that cycle of productivity tools and how we all kind of have to be aware of cycles, especially in how certain seasons might need new approaches. I talked about that in the last episode on learning new vocational capacities. That's the space I'm in right now, so I tend to be thinking about that a little bit more. So let's dig into this idea of analog productivity and the hybrid system and kind of more of why I'm doing it. We're going to do some theory stuff. We're also going to talk about some specific practices. So the first thing is this. The perfect productivity system does not exist. For those of y'all that bought the Memorial Day Planner Pack, I did a 10-day email sequence for the waiting list with a lot of additional content as part of that. And I talk about this all the time. The perfect productivity system does not exist. Now, hot tip, first time news, I've got another template pack on preaching coming out later this year. It'll be the same thing, only on sale for a couple of days, and it'll be a pretty inexpensive price point. But anyway, I diverge. I guess so. Yeah, that's the word. But the perfect system doesn't exist, but you can absolutely create an appropriate system for your needs. Now, that's the big thing. It's what it boils down to. What do you need right now? Are you dealing with a lot of files and documents? You might need to be more digital and have like a fantastic file structure. No, that right there is a productivity tip. It's just file structures and knowing and understanding file structures. Sometimes you can use Trello to help manage all that kind of stuff, especially if things are moving around a lot. You might be on the go a lot like I am right now, and analog makes a lot more sense. So how is your current season changing? A lot of times that, I think, signals the need to adapt your approach. And for me, knowing that I might have 20 tiny tasks dropped into my lap one day that really matter, and I need to take care of them, but they all could be individually accomplished in a couple of minutes. This more analog approach, it seems to matter. These tasks aren't unrelated, but they're focused more on the administrative side of what I'm doing right now. So emails to send, text to follow up on, things to follow up on, documents to sign, documents to send, that sort of thing. And that sort of thing is a lot larger in my life right now than it's ever been. So remember, not a perfect system, but an appropriate system. The second thing, and I think this matters, is are you sitting or are you still? Now, yes, you can be 100% digital in both scenarios. Sitting in the same place or moving all the time. But for me, especially knowing that all of these quick tasks need to be done today or tomorrow, I find it quicker to keep track of them on paper. Opening up my phone on Trello, it takes a minute or so, getting that in there. Also, I don't have to scroll down because if I've got a bunch of cards set up in my weekly dashboard in Trello, I don't want to have to scroll down like a bunch of times to see something, to move something over, that sort of a thing. It's not the best for my workflow if I'm not sitting in front of my desktop with my monitor right in front of me. Instead, I just have this note card and I just add things to it and I cross things off of it. And also, it's really easy to sort out this stuff. Like, okay, if I'm ending my week with a bunch of stuff uncrossed off on my note card, that should be a signal that something's the matter. Either I'm saying yes to too many things, I'm allowing too many things to fall in front of me, or I'm just not getting things done. I have an episode coming up in a couple episodes talking about Cal Newport's push and pull system. Some of this is related to that idea of how I've been experimenting with pushing and pulling. But I just kind of like having this note card. And at the end of the week, my goal is to have everything crossed off and then I throw the note card away. And what matters to me right now is, the ball is moving forward. And for me, this little weird note card thing, it seems to be working out well. The third thing is this where we get kind of more into the specific stuff. I'm becoming a massive fan of index cards. I've always loved index cards. I've always used them for a couple of different things, but now let's just say I might have an Amazon like recurring shipment coming. That might be the best way to describe it. I'm continuing to read and research a lot. And inside of, a few areas of things, and now also I've used Readwise a lot over the last few years. And what I began to find out was I began searching my archive for the same like 15 or 20 bits of information. And so I realized, let me stick these things on an index card. Let me keep up with them. And it might be easier to move them, back and forth between the same stuff. Now, the writer Ryan Holiday talks about Stoicism. And he famously writes a book every year almost using this method of saving quotes on index cards. And he has a file system for it and a big, huge box. And at first I was flirting around with that, but then I went down that rabbit hole and the algorithm of the internet brought Scott Schepper's book, Anti-Net Zettelkasten, in front of me. Now, Zettelkasten is a German word for slip boxes, like literally the box you keep index cards in. And this is an older knowledge management system that's not just restricted to quotes, but more formed out ideas and all sorts of other information that you manage while writing them on an index card. And there's an almost like a Dewey Decimal type system for retaining these things and filing them and indexing them. And I got curious, and then I found myself, oh my goodness, this might be what I've been looking for. I said earlier, I tried to use Rome Research for this sort of thing a couple of years ago, but it was just too complicated. It was too much. So I've been doing this for around the last 2-3 months, and it has rapidly, and I mean rapidly, helped me with workshop creation, with a couple of the sermons I've preached over the last few months since I'm not fully in a pulpit full-time at a local church. It's helped me out with writing. It's helped me out with other ideas. I've been doing all sorts of stuff, banking off of, these things I'm thinking about interacting with and saving them. And you can check the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/118 for a picture of what, this looks like. And I'm going to be making some more content around this idea, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's fantastic for preachers. I think it matters so much for preachers, especially if you read a lot. It can be a game changer for just sermon writing and that sort of thing. Now, my wife has managed her life with index cards for the last 20 years, and I typically get her a box of 5,000 as a gag gift at least once a year. But I can also keep up with other ideas from notes, from information from a journal, all these sorts of things. If I'm leading a workshop and there's a lot of back and forth, it's not odd for me just to have, an index card sitting on top of my journal, and that's what I'm taking notes on for the workshop. And I love it because I can just file it, and I have an index now, and I know where stuff can go to. So I had a coaching call with the church I'm working with a pastor I'm working with the other day about a specific workshop. And so before the workshop, I went over my index. I found the 3 note cards I wrote that day from their workshop, and I had them pulled out right there in front of me so that the analog just helps us live in the moment better and helps us just save and retain things without being tied to this device. So I'm still using some digital tools. The basics for me, the big learnings from the previous loops are still there. Still using Evernote. Still love it. Still using Trello for project management and for my weekly dashboard. I'm in it a lot still. I'm still using GoodNotes for my working notebook, but I've managed to integrate these analog tools back into my system. And like I told you, I've been printing out day sheets. I even have done a trial run, and I found a company that would make me an 8.5 by 11 pad with the day sheet and 50 sheet pads. And it wasn't that expensive. I had some made. I can write one down and peel a new one off the next day. I might even put these up for sale because a lot of people love the day sheet. So if you're curious about this, hey, reach out to me and say, Chad, the day sheet pad sounds really, really rad. You can also go in the show notes to download the free PDF of this day sheet tool. I'd love to give that to you. It's, probably the best thing Productive Pastor has ever done. So that's it. The perfect system, it doesn't exist, but we should always be adapting into what's the most appropriate system. That's the lesson I have to share with you today. So next episode, coming back in, we're talking about preaching strategy and vision. Excited to get this one out to you. I love that conversation. I think that the sermon is such a place to talk about what does it mean to preach vision and to see sermons as part of a larger strategy for many different things at your church. So that's it. Chad Brooks, Productive Pastor. Great to have you on. Come check us out on Facebook, the Productive Pastor Community. It's a private Facebook group, over 1,000 pastors in there, where we are urging each other along to healthy ministry through strategic productivity. Hope you have a great week, and I will see you back on the next episode.